Lovely. Well, we are recording now, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on this, what for me is at least a rainy, miserable evening. So to be honest, there's possibly nowhere better than I would be than joining with some other professionals and talking about some interesting technical stuff. We have a guest speaker here in Genna today, so I am very excited about that session. And I think we've got quite a few people on the call today, so I can see that you're also quite excited about that. So my name's Kerry Townsend. I am a freelance consultant. I have been working with Marketing Cloud for probably the last 4 years, and then in the Salesforce space for probably the last, I think it's 12 or 13. After it went beyond 10, I sort of didn't count anymore and just said it was over a decade. And my co-host Jimson, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I think most people know me. I'm Jimson Lee. I'm with Cloud Analyst. We are a registered Salesforce partner based in Brighton, London, and Manchester. So we're focused mostly on Marketing Cloud niche projects, but we also do a lot of cross-cloud projects as well. And,
cool.
Yeah, back to you, Kerry.
Awesome, thank you. I see a number of familiar names and some familiar faces on the call. If you're new, welcome. We hope this will be the first of many times that you attend. So this afternoon, well, it's this evening even, we're doing a brief welcome. That's what this bit is. We've got a couple of announcements of things that are happening in the coming weeks, and then a little bit of information about the format of our next meeting. And then we'll move to the main talk here, which we've got Genna, and she's going to talk to us all about AMPscript, which will be, well, again, I'm pretty excited about that. And then we'll have some time for QA and discussion and wrap up. So if you've got any questions, do feel free to either put them in the chat as we go, or we'll open the floor up for questions towards the end. So in terms of the ways to connect with us, so obviously you found the Trailblazer meeting page, because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to sign up for this event in the first place. But in between our meetings, you can also connect to us on the Trailblazer community. And within there, that is where you can, like, I'll typically post about the next meeting, but then also some typically Salesforce people post about other events that might be coming up or webinars that you might be interested in. And we also have people who are either looking for job opportunities, or also we sometimes get people advertising roles. So if that's the sort of content that you're interested in, then I would definitely recommend joining that group. Our membership of that is actually ticking up quite nicely, and we've just pretty much gone over the 450 people in there. So it's really great to have a space with so many sort of Marketing Cloud people that you can connect to at any given point. We record these meetings, and we put those recordings on a YouTube channel, which can be found by searching for SFMC London, or there's a bit.ly link that you can see on the screen. We started doing online sessions in about April last year, so we've probably got somewhere between 10 and 12 different sessions up there for you to go back. So if you miss a meeting, but you were interested in the topic that we were talking about, you can go back to that and rewatch it. Or if you attended a meeting and there were some announcements and there were some links in there, but you didn't have a chance to actually capture them at the time, you can also go back on there. We do have a Twitter handle. I have to say, it's not the most vibrant, but you usually do put the announcements out there for each month and the meeting that we're having. So it's just something that you might want to subscribe to if that's one of the ways that you consume information about what's going on in the Salesforce community. And then after that, so next month's meeting, we're actually going to be hosting a watch party for Connections. So I'm not sure if everybody's aware of Connections, but Connections is the sort of B2B and B2C focused event that Salesforce run. Now, they didn't run it last year. It would typically be in person, and it might be something, I think, up to 3 days. But obviously, we're not at the point that we're having large scale in-person events. So this year they are running it online, and that will be on the 2nd of June. So that actually works out reasonably well for us because it will be in the morning in Pacific time in the US, but for us that's sort of in our afternoon / beginning of evening. So it means that the kickoff will actually be at around 5. So we're going to host a watch party. So you are very welcome to join us just before that session starts. So about 4:45, we'll get together, we'll connect, and then we'll all watch the kickoff and those sessions, and then potentially come back on and have a chat about that afterwards. There will be other content going on as well. So if people just want to drop off straight away and go and indulge in that, then that's perfectly great. But otherwise, like, I'll at least stay on the call for a bit. And if people want to chat about what they've seen, and while we're also on the call, we can also, you know, use the chat function, and people can raise or ask questions about things that they might want to know more about, and someone else on the call might know a bit more about that, and they might be able to signpost them to other sessions or resources. So this is the first time we've done a watch party, so I've got no idea how popular it will be. That's one of the reasons for trying it in the first place. So we would love to see you. We'll get the event page up very shortly. It is important that you register for connections in advance, because that's what will allow you to then be able to watch the session. We're not going to live stream that session through Zoom. It will more be everybody steps out and watches it on their own machine, because that will give them a better experience. So we'd love to see you there. And then in terms of the London community and what's happening around us, so the dev group are meeting on the 19th. And the admins are meeting on the 20th. So they're both next week. So if you also cross over into any of those areas, and I know that a number of people might also work in a sort of multi-cloud environment, then those also might be meetings that you are interested in. And then we also know that periodically Salesforce run sort of a session around the email marketing specialist certification. So in terms of the marketing cloud certifications, the email specialist is typically the first one that people might start with. Now, obviously, some people go down the admin route, but typically the email specialist is more accessible because it just focuses on one particular domain. And a lot of Marketing Cloud users use the email element of the platform, and then they perhaps branch into some of the other channels. So there is a session running on the 28th of May in UK time zone, or UK and Europe time zone, and it runs from 10, and I think that is, as you can see, it's a good few hours. There's some good content in there. So if you've either been preparing for that exam, or you are new to Marketing Cloud and looking for a way to start, then that is definitely a session that you might want to sign up for. Also in here, there is a bit.ly link to the Trailhead Live schedule. And I noticed in there that when you click through to that link, it will give you the schedule for all of the Trailhead Live sessions, but there are also another few bits of marketing content there. So there's a couple of sessions coming up in the next couple of weeks, one after the other, which also talks about email accessibility. And they were really quite short sessions. They're only 15 minutes. But again, if you wanted either to refresh your knowledge or really just start on that journey about accessibility, then those might be two sessions that you would be interested in. So it's actually worth having a look at those. They're typically, they can be up to an hour, but some of them are just 15 or 20 minutes. So they're areas that you could tuck into and actually get some information. So that is another place where we're seeing more and more marketing content, which is really great.
Yeah, actually, Carrie,
yeah.
Can you check your chat, please, for a second? I'll speak. So just to go back, the link that Carrie sent, it's not just Marketing Cloud. There are tons and tons of other courses, classes, certification preps in that link that Carrie posted. Highly recommend that you check it out. You can go to trailhead.salesforce.com/live/schedule. It's the same link, and you can actually see the many courses. So if you really want to go deeper dive, yeah, this one here, it's this short code. But that's just only one of like 100 different offerings in that link.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great.
There was a huge amount in there, and I think it was Trailhead Live where they did a session about email deliverability, and that element, and that was they had a really great session on there as well, which I'm sure is somewhere in the archive. I just can't remember exactly who that was. So if we now move on to the main event, so less of me talking and more of Genna talking, which is awesome. So Genna, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you could give us a brief introduction, and then we'll dive in.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. All right, and bear with me while I pick the right screen here. Can you guys see that?
It is thinking about it. It's definitely thinking about it. And I can see it on my side.
That is the screen.
All right. Are you seeing my slides?
Your Trailblazer slide, yes.
Okay, good. The right thing is showing. All right. So, I was telling Jimson and Carrie before we started that technology outside of the marketing cloud is not really my strong suit. So anyways, I'm Genna Matson, and I'm going to talk to you guys about applicable marketing or applicable AMPscripting for the marketing cloud. And you can find me at my Twitter handle down here if you have any questions after we're through, or just want to talk about AMPscript or anything marketing cloud. So there you go. Yes, my name is Genna Matson. I am a senior Salesforce Marketing Cloud engineer at DEG. I am a co-founder of howto.sfmc.com, which is a new, we don't like to call ourselves a community, but we kind of are a community that is focused on showing people how to do different things in the marketing cloud and extending the documentation where it falls short around the marketing cloud specifically. So if you guys are interested in coming and chatting with us or joining with us, just hit me on Twitter, and I will send you an invite to our Slack space, because we do have a Slack space that will be going live soon. Or you can check out the website and see what we're talking about there. And if you're wanting to contribute in any ways, we're always looking for contributors for anything on how to SFMC. So throwing that out there. So to get us going today, also I'm an MVP and a marketing cloud champion and all that good stuff. I've been in the marketing cloud for since the ET days. So over a decade now, like Carrie says, stop counting at a decade, right? Yeah, so if you guys have any questions afterwards, please reach out to me. I'm always here for you. All right. Sorry, technology. Okay, there we go. All right, so what is AMPscript? You guys probably know what AMPscript is. Hopefully you do. Coming in here, hopefully you're like me and it's probably your love language. And but basically it's a proprietary scripting language that was developed by the Marketing Cloud or by ExactTarget back in 2008. It is a server-side scripting language. It is programmatic in nature, but it kind of acts as an object-oriented language. So it's kind of a hybrid language. And there are 148 predefined functions at the last count, and actually need to check into that because I think 2 have been added, so that count might be off by now. But yeah, so AMPscript is really flexible across most of the Marketing Cloud, and let's get into that. All right, so where can it be applied? AMPscript can be cried across pretty much anywhere inside the Marketing Cloud. Email Studio, Content Builder, Journey Builder. You can see here all aspects of email, really. You can apply it to add customized messaging to your responses for your response mail management. You can add AMPscript to flex out your parameter manager and your web analytics connector by being able to analyze segments through the wax strings. You could create dynamic sender profiles using AMPscript and create a truly one-to-one experience in your marketing communications throughout the Marketing Cloud for your subscribers using AMPscript by accessing it everywhere. Like I said, in Journey Builder, Content Builder, and Email Studio for email purposes. You could also use it in landing pages and cloud pages, SMS, push notifications, and Einstein email recommendations, which is probably what I'm most excited about right at the moment, because I've been playing with some of the Einstein content blocks myself. But so let's talk a little bit about email and where it can be applied in Content Builder and Journey Builder. It can be used for personalization, dynamic content, Salesforce object interactions, API calls, XML parsing, segmentation, send logging, tracking. Let's talk a little bit about each one of these. Personalization, of course, is just basic personalization. First name, address information, order information if you're sending triggered emails or something like that. Dynamic content can be personalization. I call it personalization on steroids. It can be basically anything within the email, down to color schemes and font choices if you're talking about accessibility and want to target audiences with specific abilities or disabilities. You can use it to interact with Salesforce Objects. I've got a little story here because depending on what portion of the Marketing Cloud you're using, you want to interact with Salesforce Objects differently. If you're using Journey Builder, you might not want to interact with the Salesforce object from within the email itself. You can use the Salesforce update activity. I forgot the exact name of it if you're in Journey Builder, so there's not really a need to use those AMPscript functions in an email in Journey Builder itself. But if you're sending like a triggered email or something like that, or an email from Automation Studio, you can interact with certain Salesforce objects with AMPscript functions really easily from within an email itself. And API calls, again, very similarly to interacting with the Salesforce objects. Of course, the Salesforce objects are API calls too. It's just written a different way. But if you're making an API call from within Journey Builder, you can do it a little bit differently than you would say from within an email. I would recommend using server-side JavaScript to make an API call from within an email instead of using AMPscript. Just it's a little bit more flexible and a little bit easier. And of course, if you're parsing JSON, you would want to use server-side JavaScript as well. You can do it with AMPscript. I have done it before, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do because there's not those handy-dandy little functions to parse out JSON like there are with XML. You kind of have to find an object that you can index within the payload that you're trying to parse, or a delimiter of some sort that you can index, and then rip it apart using a series of AMPscript functions to access the node in the JSON object that you're trying to access or trying to retrieve, which can be quite a difficult task if you're using AMPscript. So I do recommend using server-side JavaScript for that as well as API calls. You could do segmentation, send logging, and tracking with AMPscript, which I love to do, especially whenever you're talking segmentation for dynamic content. And you can track and log display and time of display and things like that at time of send for each segment with AMPscript. So you can get really, really detailed and advanced with email within here. Very much like all the advanced techniques that you can do within email, you can do the same thing with sender profiles and reply mail management in the WAG. by making dynamic messages and send logging and tracking. Same way as you would within the email messages. And then within Cloud Pages, Push, SMS, and Einstein email recommendations, you can actually do quite a bit of the same thing you can do with email, but in just different ways. So you'll notice the list of activities you can do under Cloud Pages is the same, pretty much the same list of activities that you can do under emails. But with Cloud Pages, of course, you have a lot more flexibility. You can really build out some neat things with Cloud Pages, and we'll get into that in just a little bit here. And then with SMS and Push, you can add dynamic personalization, you can do some send logging, you can do some tracking, and there are some custom functions for those message types that we'll talk about. And then with Einstein email recommendations, you can get really advanced with Einstein email recommendations and the AMPscripting you're doing in there. It's just slightly different syntactical changes that are in the Einstein email recommendations blocks that we'll talk about in just a few minutes here. But you can do just about everything you can do in an email in an Einstein recommendation block. Just about. You might want to test out some of those functions because some of them are a little bit tricky and have not been thoroughly vetted yet in the recommendation blocks. So remember to test thoroughly. But yeah, so let's talk about Einstein for email. Like we were saying, you can do each one of those items over to the left that we discussed a little bit. Let's talk about some advanced use cases for each one of those. So modular templates and content management systems, or whatever I've heard them called, email design systems, I've heard them called recently, are very easy to build out in the marketing cloud using AMPscript because everything's available to you with the proprietary language from within the platform itself. You can build out modular templates, which would enable your marketers and your marketing team to be able to create drag and drop emails very quickly. If you want to, or you can do data-driven, dynamically layered templates that would allow your end users to basically go hands-off by accessing data that would be retrieved from either an API call to an outside server, or say retrieve information from another Salesforce cloud. If the connector is used for those marketing cloud, the Salesforce object interactions, those Salesforce object functions, you can retrieve data from a data extension and basically build out a system that you can go completely hands-off with by just assigning a subscriber set to a particular template. And the template itself could identify what content to display based on the data that is in the template itself at time of send for that individual subscriber. So you wouldn't need to actually do any coding at time of send prior to that. It would be data-driven. You could also, like I said, create a content management system, which would identify which content to bring in again, just in a different way. You could do you can automate certain workflow processes using different activities that react at time of send, like you could call out to a landing page, have a landing page in Cloud Pages, process some data for you at time of send, and then insert it into a send log or something like that. And then you can do some advanced conversion tracking and engagement tracking, like I said, by accessing the WAC and possibly some reply mail management and the sender profiles to identify who sent what to who, when, and how they interacted after they got out of the email. Or you can identify which content they were engaging with within the email itself by appending certain parameters using AMPscript, like a concat function or something like that. on your WAC string. So those are lots of different use cases for email. And please feel free to ask questions, and we will review them at the end and talk about some of those advanced cases. And then, of course, for cloud pages and AMPscript, you can do pretty much the same thing, except you can even go more intense. So you can actually build out like a web form for a content management system for your clients to go in and select which content they want to display in the email campaign that they are setting up, or in the marketing program that they are setting up. And then you can have that web form push that information over to another page on the microsite that you created, and have it then display possibly build out even what the email will look like, or the message will look like for your user, using AMPscript on the in the cloud page. So that would be a fully built out like email design system for your subscribers, or for your users or clients, depending on how you're working. Anyways, but yeah, so but yeah, you could build out different automated workflow processes, again, like I was talking about, in combination with Automation Studio and Email Studio, and cloud pages. You could move data around, assign data to certain subscribers, and ease workflow for your marketers who are used to doing things manually. You can completely automate it, and you can do application development, which is quite interesting in cloud pages. So there's a lot that you can do there, and if I go to the next slide here. Uh-oh. We have a problem. Darn it. Let me see what's going on there, guys. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's the Google Slides, I think.
Reload. Okay, let me
see if I can load it, because I have your slides.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I think it was just a bit of script on that one. I'm going to try to go there and look. I wanted to speak to it.
It loads for me, your page.
Huh. Because that one had some cool little hints on it. I really want you guys to see that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go. Haha. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. So these are some little tricks that I like to use cloud pages for. And one of my favorites, and one that Jimson wanted me to call out here, was for faster previews and editing. And if you've used the new Cloud Pages experience, you'll notice that it has the lightning treatment now, which is really cool, because you can now put your collections together, create folders, easily copy a landing page or a collection to create developer and production environments. So it's got some really great features, but it is still on the slow side to preview and update and publish. Cloud Pages, it's probably a little bit slower now because of the caching mechanism behind Lightning. So in order to get around that and having to wait 5 to 10 minutes in order for your experience or your page or your script or whatever you're working with to propagate, you can actually use this lovely little combination of functions I've got in this little snippet here, which basically is a web scrape that will allow you to retrieve content from say a Dropbox or an external server someplace. And I just have an example here, sandbox path, whatever you choose to use for your external server. It just has to be a public facing domain. And you could do, like I said, you could use Dropbox, you could use Google Drive, I've seen people doing. But it's basically just it retrieves the content on that for the file that you're telling it to retrieve the content for, and allows you to basically code and see a preview of your edits much faster than having, and you don't have to press that schedule and publish button. You can just save your file on your oh gosh, words, Sublime Text on your code editor, or VS Code or whatever you're using. You can just hit save there. It'll automatically save to wherever you have it hosted on your Dropbox or your external server or whatever. And then this function, you drop it into your cloud page, and it will you just refresh your cloud page, not even your you don't have to hit schedule and publish, and it will automatically refresh your or show the content that you just saved to that server. Another thing you can do with the cloud pages is easily run scripts or activities. And I actually have one stood up over here that I can show you real fast. It's not using AMPscript, it's using WS Proxy, but it's a neat little trick to quickly stand something up in cloud pages. And I'll show you guys real fast. So this is a WS Proxy script I have that's created to that will create a data extension. And as you can see here, I've written not AMPscript because this is WS Proxy. But I thought I'd save this. Oh, I don't like that. That's not cool. You used to be able to just click out to it. Okay.
You're on a edit S4 stack.
Yep. And I got a bad request, so it's not going to let me do that. But what basically that does is it will create a data extension really quickly, and we can throw it into a script activity. But you can use cloud pages to test content blocks. If I had some content loaded in here, I'd show it to you, but I don't right now. So say you have a content block, you just, instead of putting in a, running the content block in Email Studio, you can use a content block by key or by ID or by name function on your cloud page to retrieve that content block and then quickly test it. Every time you hit save, you can just refresh your screen on the cloud page and you can see the edits to that content block being made. So it's really good to use cloud pages to test out, honestly, most of your AMPscript, regardless if it's for an email or for a cloud page or for even for an application in cloud pages. Yeah, use the tools that you're given. Also consider mixing AMPscript and SSJS on cloud pages for maximum functionality. Like I said, it is much easier to make an API call using SSJS than it is using AMPscript, and that holds true on cloud pages as well. So, all right. And next, we're going to talk about some Mobile Connect SMS messaging. SMS actually has some custom functions that are only used for SMS, or some custom AMPscript functions that are only used for SMS. And those are message down, and there's a couple others. There's two others that I did not include in this list here that are specific around MMS messaging or links. And that can be retrieved from your MMS messages and displayed in your SMS messages. So do look those up in the link I provided below in the read more about AMPscript and SMS. But the message function is actually really, really nice. I lost my notes around here. But it will allow you to retrieve a specific message based on the ID that you put in there, and or based on a message based on the keyword that you've identified to retrieve. So that is one of the functions that's available to you. And then the noun function is pretty neat too, because it will look through your message that you have, and it will identify each noun in the message, indexing at 0. So if you put a 0 in there instead of a 0, 1, it will identify the first noun in the message and retrieve it for display in another message that you're sending out. And if you put a 1 in there, it'll retrieve the second noun in the message, and 2 and so forth will retrieve the third one, and so forth. So those are some pretty neat little functions you can use. I like that noun one because it's kind of fun. I hope they do a verb one, so you can take an action or use an action word. I think it's funny that they only use noun. Anyways, you can also do send logging and tracking from within SMS messages using the insert data and the delete data functions. And so you can basically do some data hygiene during the time of your SMS messages, especially with that delete data function. So say somebody, say you have a program set up, and you guys are under GDPR, right? So someone has requested that you delete their data. You could actually do it from within the SMS message using that delete data. You know, press 1 to delete data or something like that. Whenever you get 1 back, you can identify that subscriber and the delete data from the message stream itself, rather than having to go out to another portion of the Marketing Cloud. So really fun use cases for SMS, for AMPscript and SMS. And then there are some fun use cases for AMPscripting and mobile push notifications too. And remember to test this out. There are some nuances, and I haven't built out a mobile push notification using AMPscript in about 2 months, but I did about 2 months ago, and there were some caveats around subscriber key. So make sure you've identified subscriber key process. Absolutely. For your push notifications, because that is a notification that's going out in a mobile app. So if you don't have the subscribers identified correctly, they will not get your notifications. But there are a few different ways to build out push notifications. You can do it in Content Builder, you can do it in Journey Builder, and use AMPscript in all of those. Pretty much all the AMPscript functions are available to you, and there's some really good examples of how to use AMPscript in Content Builder and in Journey Builder on those links that I provided there for the references. That last reference down there is the push data views, because that is not actually documented anywhere in the Salesforce help pages right at the moment. But that link there will take you out to a Stack Exchange post that has been documented by some trailblazers, or that have documented the push data views. The push data views are really good to use to analyze who's received your push notifications and information in those push notifications. So not necessarily for AMPscript, but I just wanted to throw that in there so that you guys could have full functionality. All right, and this is some of that. I just wanted to show you how intense you could get with your AMPscript inside of a push notifications. This is a push notification that I built a few months ago that, as you can see, uses quite a bit of AMPscript to define the coupon amount for each subscriber based on their points that they currently have in their loyalty program. And the points were, for this particular subscriber, were stored as text, and so we had to do some manipulation on them in order to anyways, this is a very weird loyalty program, and I had to do quite a bit of math in different parts of the Marketing Cloud in order to make sure these points were displayed and calculated correctly. But you can read over the math there and see how intense you can get with some of the functions in a push notification. So don't be shy, is what I'm saying. Push your limits. All right. And then my favorite new thing to play with is the Einstein email recommendations and the behavioral trigger modules, behavioral trigger content blocks. I can't remember exactly what they're called in the Marketing Cloud, and throwing some AMPscript in there, you can get really intense once again with your Einstein email recommendation modules, and that is from within the platform. You can get pretty intense. There are a couple little nuances. They use product attributes like personalization strings, and these are relating to your product catalog that you have housed within Einstein. And I am not an expert there, but I can find you somebody that can help you set up your product catalog if you need help. Now, if you want to know how to use your product catalog, I'm happy to help you there. And that's by accessing these product attributes from within the Einstein recommendations email tool within the platform. They act very much like personalization strings. So you don't have to use a value function to identify or to set attributes. You only have to retrieve them from, you can only really retrieve them from the or you don't have, not only, I'm sorry, backtrack over what I said there. You can do a lookup function from an Einstein email recommendation block just as you can, and you can set attributes just as you can a regular module inside of the Marketing Cloud. But if you want to use product attributes that are already housed inside of your product catalog, your DEG Digital product catalog, it is easier to access them by using these product attributes that are available to you from within the Einstein platform. And those look very much like personalization strings, with just they are delimited by a %% on either side of the attribute name. And the attribute names are directly picked up from your product catalog. Now, there are some interesting nuances to the code inside of the Einstein recommendation modules. And that is because you guys know how Salesforce buys products. They bought DEG Digital for this particular tool, and put it into the Marketing Cloud. And because of that, they haven't, there's not complete parity between the two platforms just yet. They're working on it. Until then, there are some little nuances that are slightly different. For instance, you can use the greater than or less than symbols or carets, however you choose to define those, or whatever term you use to define those with, to denote greater than or less than. Or you can use greater than ampersand GT semicolon, or GTE, greater than or equal to, for greater than or equal to is GTE instead of GT. I didn't include that in here, but I can update that later. And for less than, instead of using the less than caret, you would use, or bracket, you would use the ampersand LT or LTE for less than or equal to, semicolon. And those will denote greater than or less than in your conditional statements. And for and or use ampersand ampersand, and for or you use pipe pipe instead of using and, the term and or. And those are some things to consider whenever you're coding for the Einstein email recommendation modules. But other than that, the syntactically, it's very, very similar to what you're used to with AMPscript. The delimiters are the same whenever you're opening a block that will be analyzed in the code itself. So you'll use a %% square bracket to open and close to delimit the processing blocks within the code itself. And you will use %% to declare a personalization string. Or like I said, if you were doing a lookup, you would use a you could set a variable out. If you're looking up an attribute outside of the product catalog, you would set a variable with a lookup function and then retrieve that function or retrieve that variable, and using a variable or value of v function in the block itself where you want that value to be displayed. So, and you can read more about AMPscript for Einstein in this link below here. And I highly recommend you read over that. There's some interesting little use cases and nuances in there, and you can have a lot of fun with product recommendations. And honestly, creep out some of your subscribers with some of those product recommendations if you get really intense with the logic. So be careful with that too. And this is, I just wanted to show you guys a little bit like what the code looks like inside of the Marketing Cloud for those Einstein recommendation blocks. As you can see in this conditional statement here, we still have the square brackets to delimit the opening and closing of a conditional statement there. And then I used ampersand, LT, and semicolon for less than to display, to choose which price to display, the regular price or the sales price. And you can see that in this case, the sales price was that should probably have been displayed. I probably should have processed that before I actually took the screenshot. So you're seeing a mistake there, guys. Sorry about that. There we go. But yeah, so so this is slightly wrong for this. So I'm going to take this away, but this does function. So I do apologize for that. But yeah, so if the sales price is if there is a sales price that is greater than the regular price, or is less than I guess that's right. The sales price is less than the regular price. I need to add an additional statement in there. I just noticed an error, guys. I need to fix that for this client, because this is real code. Anyway, so what I need to do is put another condition in there that says if the sales price is 0, don't display it. You see that I just have it right now. It says if the sales price is less than the regular price, then it displays the regular price with the sales price below it. But there's no statement that there's no business logic in here that determines if there is a sale on this product. So we're going to fix that. So anyways.
That looks like a free product to me. I mean.
It does look like a free product to you, doesn't it? Yeah. Yep.
I want it. I don't know what it was, but I've got a bug in there, so I'll take it.
You do have a bargain, don't you? Yeah, I need to fix that. I'm about to, after this call, I'm going back to this client. I'm going to say, hey, we got a problem. Yeah.
I mean, the chances of them actually putting in a sale price of 0 is reduced. I appreciate that.
I don't know about this particular client with their data, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It happened before. We've had cases where I think it was Ryanair or EasyJet where they had like $1 or £1 fares, and it was a mistake. And
yeah.
Or was it? Maybe it was something else, but they had to honor it because people actually paid, £1 for a product, even though it was several hundred. So yeah, I forget.
That's what I'm saying. And for this product catalog, that $56 is on the high end of one of the product offerings for this particular client, but at the same time they do have zeros in that sales price.
Yeah, just let us know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. I caught an error in my code while I was reviewing it for you guys for the for this presentation. So guys, always test your code. Seriously. This is prime example of why you wouldn't want to.
And I think, Genna, as you were saying, like some of the use cases you've described here are quite complex, and it takes it away from the individual marketers from having to do that with segmenting lots of data, having lots of different data extensions, having a lot of different versions. But either way, there's a level of testing for either version of how you do that, which is important.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to the end of our presentation. So I just wanted to throw out some references for everybody here. You have the official AMPscript guide documentation. If you get in touch with me, I have the original ET PDF AMPscript guide. I don't know if you guys remember, but I will pass that to you. probably shouldn't be passing that around, but I will.
Yep.
Or I can provide it to you and Carrie and you and Jimson when we're done here, and you guys can distribute it as you see fit.
I mean, I'm interested to see it.
Yeah, right.
It feels vintage.
It is vintage at this point. So,
yeah.
I don't know if it's technically vintage, but yeah. But yeah, so I've got that. But the official documentation is there, and there's a link out to you there. I've linked in the AMPscript guide. That is Elliot Harper and Adam Spriggs's book / website. I highly, highly, highly recommend getting a subscription to the website, because they have a ton of tips and tricks in there for subscribers. If AMPscript is your love language, it's definitely a go-to reference. How to SFMC, I threw that out there so you guys can get in touch with me if you want to harass me. I'm open for that. And then SF Marketing Cloud, or marketing.cloud, that's Susanna. I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm not going to try. But that is her site. She's got some very good advanced use cases for AMPscript on her site. Sprignature Moves, that's Adam Spriggs's personal site. I love his AMPscript examples, because you can kind of see he takes it step by step through his thought process to show you what he was thinking whenever he came up with his approach. So it's always really fun to see. And then Email Geek Slack is a great place to go and commune with just email geeks in general, but there are a couple of channels that are dedicated to Marketing Cloud on Email Geek Slack. And then of course I threw out an AMPscript highlighter package. There is one for VS Code. This one in particular is for Sublime Text. I don't have a link to the VS Code one, but I'm trying to hunt down one for you guys, so you can use it. Depending on which code editors you like to use. I believe there's one for Notepad++, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So other than that, thank you guys, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I think some questions here on the chat, but before we start the questions, there's one thing I wanted to highlight about AMPscript, because people love to do something with AMPscript, do something special, personal, but they can do the reverse. You can actually do something you don't want to do. And the best example are exclusion scripts. Now, this can be your best friend, because let's say you're at a client site and you've inherited another ESP like .mailer or MailChimp, and you're setting up the marketing cloud for them. And they have a legacy, 10,000 people who unsubscribed. Well, how do you set that into your system, right? And you don't want to add it and then cancel your contacts, so on and so forth. So the exclusion scripts can be your best friend when it comes to like AMPscript, right? That's
absolutely, and those can be applied in a number of different places, in Email Studio and Journey Builder, in User Initiated Sends and Automation Studio. Absolutely. Exclusion scripts are extremely powerful, and within the email themselves. And that's what I was talking about with segmentation too. I use exclusion scripts actually to look up against, to define sometimes who I want to display a certain piece of information to, or not display a certain piece of information to, if you want to exclude them or collapse a certain area on your cloud page even, or on your in your email. Or in any of your messages, really, you can collapse an entire section, or hide content from somebody that shouldn't be seeing that content.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so there's a question on the chat here from Florin. He's asking if does the AMPscript architecture permit the implementation of arrays and the try-catch blocks?
So that's a great question. Okay, so try-catch, you can do try-catch within AMPscript, but you do have to close your AMPscript blocks and open up a JavaScript blocks, and then you can actually do a try-catch to test your AMPscript. But you are using server-side JavaScript to do that try-catch. So yes, you can do that. So like I said, mix server-side and AMPscript. Don't be shy with doing that. That's what it's there for you to do. And then what was the first part of that question? I went straight to the try-catch.
Does AMPscript permit the implementation of arrays and try-catch blocks?
Okay, so arrays is, there are ways to build arrays with AMPscript. The function you're looking for is, let me make sure I pull up the right function name for you. It's a build row set from string. And you basically create a string that's delimited by whatever you decide to delimit it by. You could do a comma, you could do a pipe. I try not to do a comma. I usually do a pipe or something else. And then you can use the build row set from string block or string function to basically retrieve the content in that array that you've created. So it's not like you can't create an easy array, but there is a way to create an array. And let me find the right function for you so I don't tell you wrong. Okay. And again, mix server-side JavaScript and AMPscript. Do not be shy. That is what it's there for.
Right. Okay, great. Andy Corbett, he has his hand up for a question. You want to speak in and turn on your camera? Just speak it in.
Yeah. Hi there. Hi. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi, Jenna. This may be a really odd question because I'm a real beginner newbie in Marketing Cloud. We have a journey which has it's based on a data extension, and inside the email that is currently sent with that journey, there's some AMPscript which constructs a URL based on various different fields within that data extension. That URL is then put inside a nice little call to action button on the email. Can I use can I insert an SMS message into this journey, which does the same kind of thing, surfaces that URL onto the SMS? And would I just need to put all of that code inside the SMS to regenerate it, or can I somehow use it from the previous step of the journey?
You could actually use the same code if you wanted to, and just pick it up from the email and place it into the SMS message, and it will do the same thing that you want it to. Test it out. You might need to tweak it just a little bit, but
can that be constructed directly inside Journey Builder?
That's a good question. I know a push notification can. I'm not sure about the SMS message itself. Let me find out the answer to that for you, and I'll get back to you. And Andy, I think are you the one that asked about on Twitter about you said you had an SMS question?
Yes, that is the question. That was me.
You inspired me to expand this entire presentation out. So I just wanted to thank you because I expanded it out to include SMS and push and the email, the Einstein components. Thank you for that, because I had a lot of fun with that. So,
okay.
I will find out an answer for you, a definitive answer for you, and get back to you. If not, through Jimson and Carrie on Twitter at least.
So presumably all of that code that I put inside the SMS message doesn't count towards the character count for the message itself.
That's a great question too, and I know there's been some talk about there. It might, so you might want to do these lookups outside of the SMS message. Store that, store that information in a data extension, and then retrieve it using an attribute value function.
Yeah. Because that data from the data extension is coming in from Sales Cloud using the connector. So I suppose what I could do is construct that URL on the object itself, on the record itself, as a formula field, and then just surface it on there.
You could if you wanted to, or you could do it from, you've already got it within the email itself, right?
Yeah.
You could take it from the email and upsert it, do an upsert DE function from within the email at time of send, and then upsert it into a DE, and then retrieve it from that DE from the. Yeah, I mean, there's like 5 different ways to do it. Probably more than that.
Okay. I'll now I know there's more than one way to skin it. I'll try it.
And you don't sound like a beginner to me. You sound like you know what you're doing. So don't sell yourself short.
And I think that's one of the things that's highlighted there, that there's typically more than one way to do something, right? And also to pick up on a point that you made earlier, Jenna, is that there might be a way to do something, but it is entirely possible that there's features of the Marketing Cloud that are not fully documented.
Entirely possible. There is a good portion of the Marketing Cloud that's not documented. And so that's why, there's folks like Susanna and Greg Gifford and, and Adam Spriggs and who are trying to write their blogs to document it. And then of course, How to SFMC. That's one of the reasons that we exist in the first place, is to talk about undocumented solutions and also the different possibilities and the different perspectives, because there are usually a good number of ways to achieve the same goal in the Marketing Cloud. So
thank you.
Something that's always struck me is that, like, when I've used it from a declarative point of view, then you'll read an article and it's just like a box that you thought you could only put text in or an email address in. You can actually just put a whole load of AMPscript in, and you're like, oh, well, I had no idea. Like, that's how that, and I think that's what catches people out with exclusions. I think they can only put emails in that box, but actually you can put
more than exclusions in that box. You can put inclusions in that box too. You know what I'm saying? You can do a lot of crazy stuff. That's like additional email attributes. That little field that says additional email attribute that you can turn on inside of the Marketing Cloud that's in the email studio creative or content builder creative. You can turn on up to 99 of those, which I do not recommend doing. Okay. But you can have 99 provisioned. I try to get 5 to 10 provisioned depending on what I'm trying to do. But you can throw a bunch of AMPscript in those and have them react. Or you can use those in your AMPscript to identify certain flags that you're trying to identify from within the email template itself, and those are so rarely used. And those are probably, so say you have a marketer there that's intimidated by code and doesn't want to touch the HTML, but you want them to be able to be empowered to change something or have something affected in the HTML by a flag that they can easily change. You can set one of those additional email attributes to be that flag, and then you can have your email look up based on that flag, look up content, look up subscriber information, look up whatever you want to based on that flag, using it as a key identifier in your data extensions or whatever you're using, or your API calls, or whatever you're using to retrieve your data to display with, or your content to display with. So, and that way that marketer doesn't have to actually go in and adjust the HTML. They can just go into the email properties pane and apply a word to an additional email attribute and watch it go from there.
Great. I think the last question is, will you send the slides or share the slides? Okay.
They are yours. Yes. Don't worry. Those are coming over.
I think we're out of time. Carrie, anything else you want to add?
No. Thank you. Apart from the thank yous to Jenna for preparing the presentation, for everyone that came and joined us. If you have any feedback or questions or anything like that, if you go to the Trailblazer .Salesforce community, we can follow up on any of those in there. Again, I'll put a link in there when the recording goes up, and we'll put a link to the presentation slides in there. So that would be a good place to find that. But otherwise, we will probably see you all at the watch party, potentially.
Yeah, hopefully you're all there. We'll look out for you guys. And anybody who wants to speak in the next meetups, if you have a topic you want to hear about, just let us know and send us an email or enter it to the user group, the chatter or success group. We want to hear what you want to hear, so just let us know.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time.